Today we are going to continue reading Bobby the Brave, Sometimes. Chapter 7, Sandy, Wilbur, and Bobby. Arf! Bobby was having a good time in 4th grade, even if he sometimes got a stomachache from the stress of PE. There were any number of ways he could embarrass himself there, like missing an easy catch during softball, or shooting an air ball in basketball, or playing football. But then, he reasoned, that always made it even nicer to come back to Mrs. Carlson's class. She hardly ever raised her voice, plus she smelled a lot better than Mr. Rainerhouse. "Class," Miss Carlson said. She was wearing Halloween pumpkin earrings. Recently, she had also worn a pair that looked like happy ghosts. "I want you to be silent as we walk to the auditorium. We will be rehearsing the musical on the stage today." A murmur ran through the room. Up until now, they had been practicing on the playground. Even though they weren't doing the entire production of Annie, like the professionals did on Broadway, there was still much to learn. Rehearsing on the stage took everything to a whole new level. As the students walked down the hall in a single file line, Bobby peered into the classrooms. When he saw Mrs. Woods, his 3rd grade teacher, he shuddered. One look from her could stop a herd of wild buffalo in its tracks. The 2nd graders were doing math. It looked so easy that Bobby laughed. In the 1st grade rooms, the kids were making Halloween masks. Bobby couldn't tell what the kindergartners were supposed to be doing. They were all running around the room screaming, except for a boy clutching a bowl of fake fruit and crying in a corner. Casey would be in kindergarten next year. Mrs. Carlson had her students sit in the audience as she stood on the stage. "We won't be rehearsing our musical from the beginning yet. That will come later. Today we are going to focus on dancing. Please be aware that this stage is not that big. I don't want anyone falling off and getting hurt." Bobby felt someone poke him. "I'm going to fall off on purpose," St. James promised. "Orphans, please," Mrs. Carlson called out. "I need all the orphans and Miss Hannigan on stage now." Swoozie raised her hand. "Am I an orphan?" Mrs. Carlson nodded. "Yes, Annie's an orphan." "Duh," St. James whispered to her. "Little orphan Annie, orphan Annie, orphan. Duh." Swoozie ignored him. The girls were experts at ignoring St. James. Bobby and St. James sat back and relaxed. Daddy Warbucks and Sandy weren't in this scene. It looked like a lot of fun dancing on the stage, and even Jackson and Chess were laughing. Some of the girls were really good dancers, including Holly, who had studied at Mrs. Cusack's School of Ballet and Tap for 3 years. When they were little, Bobby and Holly had taken Mrs. Cusack's Bitsy Baby Bounce Bounce class together, and Bobby had won the Itsy Bitsy Bouncer Award. He hoped that Holly would never tell anyone about this. Finally, it was time for Annie, Sandy, and Daddy Warbucks to practice their big number. It was exciting standing on the stage. The kids sitting in the audience looked so small. As Swoozie and St. James tried out their dance, Bobby ran around on all fours barking. It felt great making everyone laugh. "Sandy! Sandy! Be careful not to trip Annie or Daddy Warbucks," Mrs. Carlson cautioned him. "Daddy Warbucks? You're looking a little stiff. Could you loosen up a bit? Annie, you're doing a wonderful job, but make sure you don't step on Sandy." Dancing and dog romping were way more complicated than they looked, Bobby learned. Before he could try out his barking again, the rehearsal ended. "Tomorrow we'll put the songs and dances together. That's when this will really start turning into a musical," Mrs. Carlson said enthusiastically. "Now, here are letters to your parents. Each of you will be responsible for your own costumes. If you can't bring one in, talk to me privately about it, and I'll make sure you get whatever you need." Bobby looked at his letter. It read, "Dear Parents, Bobby has been selected to play Sandy in our class production of Annie. Please provide a dog costume for your child. We look forward to seeing you at the musical on Thursday, October 29th at 7 p.m. Yours truly, Mrs. Carlson." On the bottom of the letter, Mrs. Carlson had added in her neat cursive, P.S. Bobby is doing an excellent job as Sandy. Bobby read the letter a couple of times. He was proud to have been selected to play Sandy and was determined to be the best Sandy ever. I want you to pause the video and answer your first comprehension question on your Google Doc. The question is, do you think Bobby feels confident after reading the letter? Why? After you answer the question, resume the video. Wilbur could be Sandy, Chess mused as they walked home after school. Wilbur was Chess's dog and the finest canine Bobby had ever met, even if his breath smelled like sneakers and his fur was always matted in odd patches. They stopped at the ice cream truck. Chess bought a strawberry popsicle, and Bobby dug around his pockets for quarters to buy his usual Astro Pop. Sandy's a mutt and Wilbur's a mutt, Chess continued as he unwrapped his popsicle. Bobby nodded. That was true. He hoped Chess wouldn't mention this to Mrs. Carlson or anyone else, or else he might be replaced. However, he thought it would be totally cool to have a real dog on stage. Hey, Chess, Bobby said, can I come over and watch Wilbur? You know, to see how he walks and runs? It's research. Sure, said Chess, but don't touch Wilbur. Remember what happened last time. How could Bobby forget? He had given Wilbur a huge hug, and that triggered a particularly bad asthma attack. Still, he loved dogs, so it had been worth it. Bobby knew that famous actors always researched their roles. His sister Annie had told him that when Mike Marvel played the rugged surfer spy in the movie Missiles Over Maui, he had eaten nothing but coconuts for a month to prepare for the role. Dog biscuits didn't taste any worse than his dad's homemade cookies. Bobby knew this for a fact. Maybe he'd eat dog biscuits the week before the show, or at least the night of it. Bobby perched on the front porch and watched Chess and Wilbur run around. One of Wilbur's legs was shorter than the others. Bobby wondered if all of Sandy's legs were the same length and how he'd figure out something like that. He wanted to get the part exactly right. To make sure he wouldn't forget anything, Bobby drew pictures on the back of his math worksheet. Pictures of Wilbur running, Wilbur standing, Wilbur sitting, Wilbur happy, Wilbur sad. Wilbur drooled a lot, so Bobby tried drooling like the dog, but quickly ran out of spit. Later, he decided it was best not to drool on stage because someone might slip, and Mrs. Carlson had specifically said that she didn't want anyone falling off the stage. When it was time to go home, Bobby held off the urge to hug Wilbur. Thanks for everything, he told the mutt. Then, in Sandy speak, Bobby added, Arf, arf, arf! Arf, Wilbur answered. Chapter 8, So What? And notice how that so is written. It's not written like, so what are you going to do? It's written so like using needle and a thread to put fabric together. Bobby lay upside down on the couch and watched Princess Becky's planet with Casey. Da-da-doo, the pint-sized dragon, was delivering a letter to the terrible teeny-tiny trolls. That's when Bobby suddenly remembered his letter about the Sandy costume. When he emptied his backpack, there was a trio of craggy rocks, part of his lunch from last week, and a bunch of crumpled papers. He found the letter and held it out to his dad. Mr. Ellis Chan stopped dusting and sat down to read. It looks like we're supposed to supply your costume for the class musical. I'm the dog, Sandy, Bobby said proudly. To show what a great Sandy he was going to be, he began to bark and romp around the room on all fours. Casey joined him. Really? Sandy the dog? I didn't know that, his dad replied, even though Bobby told him this before. Well, I'll get started on your dog costume right away. I've always wanted to try my hand at sewing. Bobby froze mid-bark. Dad, can't we just buy a costume? Why bother to buy one, Mr. Ellis Chan said. He flexed his massive biceps, which, Bobby knew, helped his father think. We have Grammy's old sewing machine in the attic. Bobby, I'm going to make you the best darn dog costume in the world. Casey wrinkled her nose. I didn't know Daddy could sew, she said as Mr. Ellis Chan ran upstairs. Bobby picked up Mrs. Carlson's letter off the floor. I'm not so sure he can, he said solemnly. After a dinner of Mr. Ellis Chan's tuna casserole soup, Mrs. Ellis Chan took the family to Burger Barn for a snack. Then they headed to So What, the fabric store. Bobby had never been to a fabric store before. There were aisles dedicated to all sorts of yarn, thick, thin, fluffy, and fuzzy. Spools of thread in every color imaginable, even cerulean, took up an entire wall. And the knitting needles looked like the kind of weapons that Mike Marvel, the action hero, might use when fighting off surfer spies. As Bobby explored the store, he wished he had his skateboard. It would have been so cool to skate through So What, making sharp cuts around the end displays and running his hand over the rows and rows of colorful material. Can we go now? Annie moaned. I don't even know why I'm here. How about this? His mother said, pulling out a nice yellowish cotton fabric. I think Sandy is more sandy-colored, Bobby noted. He was staring at some black material with glow-in-the-dark planets on it. It seemed like that would be good for something. Maybe he could talk his mother into using it for new curtains in the living room. What about this? Casey said, tugging on a bolt of fabric. It was pink and purple with hearts on it. Can we go now? Annie said louder, this time with an exaggerated yawn. Bobby wondered if all teenagers were like Annie or if her moodiness was unique. He had asked her about it once, but after she screamed, I am not moody, he thought it best not to bring it up anymore. Well, Bobby, what do you think of Casey's fabric selection? His mother asked, smiling. He smiled back, then said to Casey, That's nice, but not quite right for a dog costume. Can we go now? Annie asked. When can we go? Hello? Is anyone listening to me? Annie, I told you. We'll leave once Bobby finds what he's looking for, Mrs. Ellis Chan said patiently. Hurry up, slowpoke, Annie hissed to her brother. Suddenly a voice boomed. I found it! At first, Bobby thought the store's loudspeaker was on. Then he recognized his father's voice. Bobby, get over to the Halloween Create a Costume aisle. Bobby rushed over to aisle 13. His father was beaming, and soon Bobby was too. Mr. Ellis Chan held a bolt of fabric over his head as if he were lifting weights. It was exactly what Bobby was looking for. The fabric looked like real fur. It was light brown and fuzzy and perfect. As soon as they got home, Mr. Ellis Chan set up the sewing machine in the guest room where Grammy and Gramps stayed when they visited. Wow, it's pretty, Casey said as she ran her hands over it. Be careful, Mrs. Ellis Chan warned. The needle is sharp. I know, Casey said, nodding. Snow White pricked her finger on a sewing machine and fell into a deep sleep until the Frog Prince saved her by giving her shoes that fit. Casey, it was Sleeping Beauty, and she pricked her finger on a spinning wheel, Bobby informed her. They had studied fairy tales in the 2nd grade. Maybe, maybe not, Casey said, but I like my story better. Daddy, she asked, how does the sewing machine work? Mr. Ellis Chan shrugged. I'm not sure. But how hard can it be? Chapter 9, Football Stress. Luckily for Bobby, he didn't have PE every day. It was Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, leaving him Tuesday and Thursday, plus the weekend to recover. Mr. Rainerhouse was a very stern teacher. Each class started with 50 jumping jacks and a brisk run around the playground with him yelling, Faster! Go faster! Bobby didn't like it when people yelled at him. Some kids didn't let it bother them when they were yelled at, like St. James. St. James got yelled at all the time. But when someone yelled at Bobby, even if it was a despicable person like Jillian Czar, it made him feel bad for a long time. I want you to pause the video and answer your second comprehension question in your Google Doc. Why do you think Bobby dislikes it when he is yelled at? How do you think it makes him feel? Resume the video after you have answered the question. 47, 48, 49, 50. Mr. Rainerhouse blew his whistle. Everyone stopped except for Jackson. Jackson was weird and loved jumping jacks as much as Bobby loved skateboarding. If there was a world record for jumping jacks, Jackson would probably break it. Bobby wondered if one day he'd ever break any records like Troy Eagle. Troy held the world record ollie, 52 inches in the air. That was taller than Bobby. I know we've been playing soccer for a while, Mr. Rainerhouse announced, so it's time for a change, and this one will be quite a treat. We'll finish up soccer today and start a new sport on Monday. Bobby blinked several times. It looks like Mr. Rainerhouse was smiling at him. What do you think we'll play next? Chess whispered. Bobby shrugged. He was fine with soccer. Soccer wasn't so bad. All you had to do was run up and down the field. He could do that. During the last game, he scored a point when Swoozy, who was the goalie, was watching a butterfly. Bobby hoped they wouldn't be playing softball. Softball was bad news. You could get hit by the ball and get a concussion. His dad had gotten a concussion more than once when playing football. At the end of soccer, Mr. Rainerhouse gathered the students. We have a celebrity among us, he announced. Bobby tried to spot the celebrity, but all he saw was one of the boys picking his nose by pretending he had an itch, and a girl scratching her armpit and then looking horrified when she saw Bobby watching. Maybe Swoozy was the celebrity because she was such a good singer. Then Mr. Rainerhouse winked at Bobby and proclaimed, I can't believe I've gone all this time without realizing that the son of my all-time favorite football player is in this class. Bobby flinched. Bobby Ellis-Chan, why didn't you tell me that the freezer is your father? Mr. Rainerhouse squatted, put his one arm out, and growled in an imitation of the freezer's most famous move. Best linebacker the LA Earthquakes ever had. Best darn football player this country has ever seen, Mr. Rainerhouse enthused. My world stood still when Sam Benzoni tackled the freezer and busted his knee. The day he retired from football was one of the saddest days of my life. I even cried, and I'm man enough to admit that. He looked like he was about to cry again. Bobby decided to change his superhero power from superhuman strength to invisibility. He would give anything to be invisible right now. So, Mr. Rainerhouse said, clearing his throat, in honor of the freezer, and because we have his very own son right here in this class, next week we will start football. Bobby Ellis-Chan, I'm going to be watching you, he said, wagging a finger at Bobby. I'll bet you can teach this class a thing or two. Heck, I'll bet you can teach me. Perhaps. Mr. Rainerhouse laughed. I'll just have you take over. Bobby glanced at Holly. She looked as worried as he did. Okay then, Mr. Rainerhouse called out. Class dismissed. Before Bobby could make his way back to room 15, Mr. Rainerhouse stopped him. It really is an honor to be your teacher, he said. Then he shook Bobby's hand so hard it made Bobby's head bobble up and down. I wonder, Mr. Rainerhouse hesitated, is there any way I could meet your dad? Maybe he could come to PE. It would mean so much to me. I'll see what I can do, Bobby mumbled. He flexed his fingers to see if they still worked. But my dad's pretty busy, with stuff and things and stuff and, stuff. So he probably can't go to school. Mr. Rainerhouse grew solemn. I understand, he said, nodding. A man like the freezer probably has lots of important things to do. This is the end of our video. And after ending the video, go to your Google Doc and answer your third comprehension question. Why do you think Bobby wanted to be invisible when Mr. Rayner House discovered that he was the freezer's son.